Hello, everybody. Welcome to this updates webinar on the Sustainability Progress Framework. We were just checking whether we could give people 1 more minute. Out of about the 30 registered, we have 11 on set now. So if we can give 2 more minutes, then I think we will just start immediately. If you can hear me, just raise your hand and I will know everything is okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I think we will start since the moment is being recorded. And so those that are not able to join us on time will have a chance to look at the recording. So again, thank you very much for taking the time to join us for this update. As usual, we will try as much as possible to show you how far we have come on this process and also give you a chance to support the process with your views and of course with your additions on the different things that we've had so far. So in terms of the things that we hope to touch on today, will be a quick update on the indicators. We'll also give an update on the reporting tool that was being developed parallel, just so that those in the call know. And then at the end of the day, then I will end with an update on some of the tests we are planning, especially on this tool, to ensure that when everyone then starts using them, then it all works well. Just for your update, we have about 12 people online so far. I know with this new technology, you're not able to see who you are in the call with. But if you want, we can, unfortunately, I would need to promote everyone to panelists so that you can see each other and also maybe introduce yourselves. But I think I can do that just to help this process so that you all feel like you're in a meeting together. So you will notice on your system, things will change and you will have more powers, which then gives us a chance to like communicate more with each other. So it's like we are in one big panel together. So in terms of the update then, I don't know whether I should give people a chance to say who they are in 1 second. Now you can see yourselves and I can unmute each person at a go so that then we feel like we are all together. So I'll start with Camilo, who is the first in the list. Just say hi. And
Hello, my name is Camilo Sanchez. I'm the sustainability person for coffee at Olam International. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Camilo. Daniela?
Hello, my name is Daniela. I'm from Brazil. I work at PNA and I work here in the GCP Brazil.
And then there is Elspeth.
Hi, everyone. This is Elspeth Nordlund. I'm from Fairtrade America, and I'm the coffee manager here.
And then there is Jeanette.
Hey everyone, I'm Jeanette.
Sorry, Jeanette.
Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I'm Jeanette. Nice to meet you. I'm working in the corporate responsibility at the Neumann Coffee Group.
Thank you, Jeanette. And then we have Jessica.
Hi there, I'm Jessica with the Committee on Sustainability Assessment.
Then we have Keith.
Good afternoon, my name's Keith and I'm with Coffee Assurance Services. Glad to be here.
We have Marcelo.
Hello everyone, I'm Marcelo, I work for Nestle.
Then we have Niels.
Hey guys, this is Niels with Conservation International.
Nicola. Sorry, Nicola, you're unmuted. As we wait for Nicola, we can have Pedro.
Hello, hi everyone. This is Pedro Ronca from Brazil, from PNA, managing the GCP Brazil program.
And then we have Sonia.
Good afternoon. My name is Sonja and I'm the head of corporate responsibility of Neumann Gruppe, the holding company of Neumann Kaffee Gruppe.
I don't know whether I've left anyone. We have two people on the telephone, so unfortunately I'm not able to allow them to get in. But I'll quickly mute everyone, and then as we get into the discussions, then give you each a chance to mute and unmute yourself and also make it more interactive. I think at least this way then we feel like we are in a meeting together than just that we are one person at the back and can't tell who it is. And then also we have the chats. Anything you put on the chat, if you say it to all panelists, then everyone in this group will see, except the people that are joining on the phone. I don't know whether the people that are joining on the phone have a way of talking. I can't tell from the system right now. But as we wait for a response from any of them, I think I saw Carol Hemmings. You just say, hi, Carol.
Hey, hi, this is Carol Hemmings from TechnoServe, having a few connection issues.
All right. All right, so I've muted everybody, but if you raise your hand during the discussions, then we will have a chance to relate with each other. So as for those of you that have been part of this process before, we know the reason we got into this whole discussion about the progress framework was really to try and see how as a sector we can measure things in a common way and see where we are as a sector in a common way. And also the other part is that not only for the whole sector, but also individually, when you have a set of ways of measuring where you are, then it gives you a chance to then also measure where you are individually. And last but not least, measurement in itself is not just an end in itself, but then it helps us then get into the process of asking ourselves questions like why we are where we are and how we can change, or whether where we are is the right place to be. So in a nutshell, that's why we are engaging in this process, because at the end of the day, we want coffee people to tell why and what the $350 million dollars that they spend a year, what that leads to, and also in a common way, but also improve in themselves. So in terms of how far we've come, we went through the process of discussions in a working group all the way till June, you know, in terms of discussing where we hope the coffee sector to be and what it means to be there in a sustainable way. We came up with a set of impacts, outcomes, and outputs we think, you know, are necessary if we are to get there. And then we went to the next step of really trying to look at, for these kinds of impacts and outputs, what are the kind of common measures we would want then to put together to measure how far we are in achieving those particular goals, whether outputs or inputs. As part of the discussion, of course, I know in the older discussions we had divided these into improved livelihoods, conservation of nature, and then we had supply and improvement, sustaining of supply, and then there was on the other side of demand and so on. But we combined those under prosperity because they are looking at both the demand and the supply side in terms of ensuring the sector is more prosperous. And now for those, each of these areas, we have sort of like put a set of indicators. Of course, there's a lot of improvement in what we call them and also improvement in what they actually mean that is happening on the side. But we also sent these to a couple of stakeholders, members, and so on, and asked them to try and rank, you know, which ones they think we are very important and we should start measuring together on. And these were some of the kinds of ranking that we received. Although I must say the feedback came from very few people, which was a bit unfortunate because then it doesn't give the big picture of where we hope to be. But I would also encourage those of us in the meeting, as part of these, we will also, the link is still live, whereby you can go and put in your thoughts. And I would encourage, you know, the 34 that have registered for this meeting and the 16 that are now participating to also just try and improve this process so that then when we say we are starting with something like productivity improvement, or whether it's looking at profits or whether it's looking at reduction of costs, then we are talking about it in the same way together and we are choosing the priorities together. At the end of the day, of course, by 2030 and hopefully even 2020, we hope that we'll all have the capacity to say something about all these in our supply chains. But as we build to that level, it would be nice that, you know, we start with some of the things that encourage us to move forward together. So in terms of the ranking, I will just show some of the points that the different things got and what was thought to be important in different areas. On the social side, I think, like we talked in a previous webinar, people talked about issues of how far, you know, the farmers or the workers are from the poverty line. They talked about things like minimum wage and an increase in these. And of course, then child labor and issues to do with hunger came a distant third and fourth in the process. And you can see just how the different things were ranked in that area. On the area of prosperity or on issues to do with, you know, the economic side of things, profit, of course, in itself, which then looks at both the production, but the cost of producing that came first. Then, of course, there were the two components to that profit, which is, of course, productivity to an optimal target, but also reduction of costs to an optimal place, so that then you are achieving the most you can for the costs that you have. The issue of the share of the FOB price that the farmers are receiving also came in on a fourth, in terms of seeing then how, I wouldn't say equitable, but how efficient the chain is in delivering to the farmer, you know, a strong part or a proper share of the bigger chain. And the others come again in that level. And then on the nature side, we have things to do with the deforestation, optimized fertilizer application. Note we are using the word optimal because we know overuse or underuse is not, efficient. And then there are the issues of water use reduction and, of course, reduction of pesticides. And someone noted the use of the word agrochemical could be confusing. So then we say pesticide usage. The other things that came up were the product environment footprint, but in the discussions we had previously, we said there were challenges in the definition of this so far, because the process that was defining that for coffee sort of seemed to have stalled. But again, the group felt that, that would be the ultimate thing, in terms of, because it encompasses most of these issues we are talking about. The other part that we also noted is the fact that on issues to do with deforestation, then we can also ensure that we are moving along with some of the innovations that are there. And for those of you that follow issues to do with deforestation, know that, the Global Forest Watch has this database of forests over time, and which we could easily use if we overlay that over where our farmers are, rather than, going to ask farmers whether they've deforested or not, trying to make this process as efficient as possible. The next steps on these is, of course, then ensuring for each of these indicator, there is a detailed methodology on how to collect it, the definition, and members will get a chance, to contribute in the refining of this. And the definition so far, we do not want to reinvent the wheel. So there is a lot of information out there, and I'm glad, we have Jessica from COSA on the call, and they've done quite some good definitions on some of the indicators that we have here. So from our case, I don't think we will reinvent that, but we will share these definitions as is, and then allow, those of you that are participating, the chance then to try and either help in improving these or making them better, or even just testing them and so on. So with the report of this call, you will get a link of some of those copied and pasted definitions so far. And then you can easily, we'll try make it interactive, whereby we'll put it on, it's on a Google Doc, where then you can easily comment, make changes, and then track that and allow for interaction of more people. So that's the details so far on this. And in part of the survey, we had asked, for members to try and support if they feel there's something that is very important that has been missed out from the current list that we have, that is also, possible to use, and, touches on some detailed issues that will improve what we say as a coffee sector. But we've not gotten much of that, but the place is still open because the processes are running concurrently. The other thing is that many of us in this call also have some of those indicators, and maybe have defined them and have used them in some processes. So one of the other things we'll allow you to do is really, in cases where you do not agree with some of the ways we've defined them, then give us the best definitions that you have and that you have tried and tested, and then we refine these and have them shared. But that's the process so far on these particular issues. So with the report of this webinar, which then comes together with this slide and the recording, you will have also that link, and we'll ask you then to give more detail. So I don't know whether there is any question on this before then I go to the reporting tool. And I will unmute all. But if you're not talking, then you can easily, now I'm sure on your system, you can see the ability to mute yourself. And then I will also add Paul, who had not been part of this, into the system. So I don't know whether anyone has a comment. And some of the comments that we got from ARIA calls, we've been using these. And I know like one of the comments we had on the previous call from Camilo was really to help support, as part of this methodology, also include the costs of collecting each of these indicators, so that then when we are giving them to members, we are giving you with also an indication of what it might then cost you to get that. The floor is open. You can mute yourself if you don't want to talk, but if you want to talk, you're all unmuted.
Hello.
Yes.
Josh, this is Marcelo from
Yes.
Nestle. Quick question from me.
Yeah.
This GCP is running this process in conjunction with SCC, right?
Yes. Yes.
Exactly. So in terms of this these inputs on the detail and on the refinement and all this, is SCC running a let's say parallel session in North America, collecting input, and all this is brought together and kind of put together within the same process, or how is that working?
Maybe I'll explain that a bit, and then Niels is also in the call, and he will take that much further. So on the process that we had on the joint working group, the deliverable that we delivered was the version 2 of the framework, which I could also include in the link at the end of this meeting. And that one then clearly described, what we want to achieve as a coffee sector, what are the pathways of getting there, what is our definition of success, and a theory of change, but also a detailed list of some of the impacts and outcomes and outputs that we hope to achieve as a coffee sector. From those impacts, outputs, and outcomes, we took some of the higher level, impacts, because in some of the discussions, people said, if we are talking about something for the whole coffee sector, then we need to look at more the results rather than, the results of our activities or the adoption of our practices, but more the change that has happened. So then we took the impact level results that were expected, and then for each of these then took indicators on then how these will be measured, and this process was then run much further based or built on the framework that was developed. And that's why also at the beginning of the meeting I explained some of the differences between that document and the way we are showing. So in terms of whether there is a parallel process for getting indicators that is happening, the answer is right now no, because and Niels will explain further, because some of the things that are now happening is as a build up to this. Of course, there is the commitment hub, but there is also on top of that a few collective action networks that have picked some of those issues, like the one on labor, the one on forests, and so on, and then is deeply going into how to improve these on that. And Niels, I don't know whether you would add something just to try and answer Marcelo, and then we can check with Marcelo whether that then fully answers your question.
Sure. I think you provided a good overview, George, of the division. But just in summary, from our perspective, it's so from February to June, we have the joint working group that really came together to bring the two processes that the GCP and the challenge were working on separately together, as in like having this common language or a common framework for the sector. Whereas on this challenge perspective, it's specifically those like the pathways, the compass for the sector, and then from the GCP perspective, really the desire to work towards these common metrics and common indicators, where we kickstarted that off and through the joint working group, and now the focus of the GCP is to continue that work and within the GCP membership define those areas where we can start measuring collectively through common indicators. On the challenge side, through our new website, we've tried to make the broader framework, so the framework which is underneath those indicators, more interactive, and we're currently putting that on our new website. So that's a little bit of that relationship, and to George's point in terms of how does it link with some of the collective action network. Well, George already alluded to the deforestation work, and one of the action networks that is led by the Sustainable Coffee Challenge looks at mapping and monitoring of coffee and forests, so precisely that topic, and also looking at like, okay, what do we need to measure if we're measuring the deforestation in the coffee sector or the risk of that. So a lot of the indicators coming out of that would also be interesting to take into the consideration of this work on defining those common indicators for the sector. I hope that answers your question, Marcelo.
Okay, so in terms of what we're seeing here, of contributions towards the refinement of the detail, this is the window, right? You don't have a parallel window with SCC. The input is here, and then this will be built together with the other paths that SCC is putting together. Okay, yeah. That's clear. Thank you.
Yeah, and then some of the things that we're looking at in the challenge is like for those individual pathways that we've defined together, like what are some of the guidance tools that we need to look into. But in terms of common metrics and indicators, this is the process indeed, and we welcome the challenge partners to engage in that as well.
Thank you, Niels, and Camilo. Marcelo. Sorry, thank you. Any other question about the process, or about the window for contribution, or about something you'd want to contribute? And I can also give Jessica a chance, just to mention about the process that COSA has had, and I'm sure many of us also here have things they would want to input, but we want just to open it up and just input it there, because I know in some instances there are challenges of people not wanting to put in input for things that they consider proprietary. And I think I have someone raising their hand. Camilo.
Yes, I have a question and perhaps a comment. Is I did vote for the ranking of the indicators, but my question is more: are we? I mean, democracy is good, but somebody has to really at the end take the lead and say, okay, this is what GCP wants to measure, and this is. Because opinions are good, and the discussion, I mean, we welcome the discussion to be enriching of the process, but at the end, we may all vote for something that is not what the sector is looking for, is what I'm trying to say. So who's gonna take that final call in saying, okay, guys, despite the fact that all of you voted for X or Y, we think as a sector that it's better to do this, and let's discuss that. Because I already saw some indicators that I will say, okay, those are good, but is that really what we want? And let me give you an example. One of them is an indicator about the poverty line.
Yeah.
The bulk of the discussion now is how farmers can profit from the coffee business.
Yeah.
And being above the poverty line is of course something, but is not going to make the case for the farmers to be profitable or have a profitable business. That's just an example. I don't want to get into the details of that discussion, but that's to say that of course we can vote and we all have good intentions, but who is taking that final call and saying, okay, I propose to do this.
Okay. Thank you very much, Camilo, for that, because then it really gets now into the issues that we are dealing with in terms of now that next step. I think on one end, some of the criteria will be more like we had in the discussion in the other time. How and I like the fact of how you brought how important is that in terms of the discussion that is going around in the sector. One of the ways we had seen as helping in really improving democracy was really also, like you had suggested previously, the costs, but the cost and the benefit of that particular indicator in terms of how much does it cost to get it, but what much does it tell about the state of the coffee sector. But two, also what you've alluded to, I think one of the other guidances that we will have, and which is then what came from the World Producer Forum, is really some sticking issues that have been brought up that then we think if they are missed out, like you've rightfully said, then that does not then help the message that we are putting out there. But the problem right now is also the democracy has not been very strong in terms of we had very few people turning up on the voting day. So on that part, then it becomes a bit complicated. But we will try both methods, see how far democracy gets us, but also, like you said, also look at, what are the very issues that are really affecting, and the rightfully one that you talked about, profitability. Luckily for us, that in terms of the issues to do with supply and so on has come up tops. But I know we will get into those challenges, but we will need, a dialogue given on meetings like these, whereby then democracy is brought into deeper reasoning, and then then make that shoot. And then, of course, what we will do is then maybe give the chair of the meeting an extra vote, and then move the direction into whatever way that it was. But we were hoping, especially with many and also people taking into consideration the challenges they're facing, because at the end of the day, these tools are supposed to help you with some of the challenges you're getting as a member of a supply chain. So if it doesn't answer the questions that you're having from your audience, then of course, then it doesn't make sense for us as a sector. But if it does, then we were hoping then that should sort of like lead us to the same points. But I really appreciate you bringing it up at this level, because we will see it coming. But then we hope as much as possible. Then when we get to a point like that, then and which is what we were using the ranking for to start with, because then that gets you closer to that. But if we see there are such divergent views from about 100 people, then it then calls for, putting other factors of reasoning, like what is really affecting us in either in the media as a coffee sector or as a whole, and then put those into the process. But thank you very much for that, Camilo. I don't know whether that has partly answered. It wasn't a yes or no answer, but I hope it has added to some of the tools that we might use to get over that.
Yeah, I just will end saying that we all should vote and participate. But as a sector, and you leading that discussion, or GCP leading that discussion, should lead us towards what the sector as a whole is more looking into. Otherwise, it will become a long laundry list, which is very important for each of us, but perhaps is not going to answer the 2 or 3 key questions that we have as a sector. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you very much for that, Faith. I think then it gives us more also or power in trying to then guide the reasoning. I don't know, Jessica, whether you had something, just mention something about, the process that you've had in like defining some of the details on some of those indicators before then we go to the reporting tool in the next step.
Sure, thanks, George. Yeah, and well done. I've seen a lot of progress in the last couple of months, so congratulations for your efforts in this space. Yeah, so COSA has, we work in the metrics and indicator space, and we've been working on standardized indicators, specifically around a short set of performance monitoring-esque list here. And it seems like there's some good carryover or correlation between the list that you see here and what COSA is working on. So it sounds like where it made sense that you've sort of extracted the metrics from the indicators that are similar. So I'll be excited to see that work when it comes out. We have made some updates in the last month, so I'll be curious to see if those updates made it into the list. But yes, we've just been working quite a bit on benchmarking our indicators to global norms, and working with a whole bunch of different folks to make sure that they really represent the best practice across the social and environmental and economic space. So yeah, we look forward to continuing to collaborate and getting clear and kind of getting consensus behind the way we're going to measure this as a community.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jessica, on this. I don't know whether anyone else has a question, or and we encourage many of us also in this call who have, like some really good properties, on clarity on some of those indicators we are talking about. As much as you can share, then just share, so that then we sort of like build in our efforts as a sector, to try and align and share, that we build, something that then is much powerful and is of more use to the sector as a whole, rather than each of us having, a set. I think that's where the commonality then comes in trying to build, something that is powerful and also usable. And we also encourage, people to try and help in terms of critiquing, some of these things, and we'll be very grateful about that. Before I continue, I also see Jenny is with us. Jenny, you wanna say hi, and then I go into the reporting part? Okay, Jenny, you're unmuted. That's fine. We'll get back to that later. On the other part, just to continue with the process, I'll mute everyone again and then give you a chance to unmute yourselves later when we come to discussion points. On the other part, then, like we said, when it comes to reporting, after you have the methodology and all that, the next hurdle I know we'll be getting into is, how do we report on these particular indicators? We've been working parallel, because we felt, in terms of alignment, in terms of bringing best practices together, in terms of supporting, the process, we know there's really a number of you in this call that have wonderful systems that is already doing part of this work for you, and for some of the things that you needed to measure. But we also felt in the same group of 18 participants today, there is another half or maybe 3/4 that doesn't have those systems yet. And we would hate it for them, to try and go out there and reinvent the wheel on some of these things. So then we thought then it would make, really good sense if we would then have something that is not proprietary, but that is usable by all the members, just to try and encourage then that kind of reporting and so on. And so it's on one hand, the reporting tool is supposed then to help facilitate reporting for those that are starting on this journey, because we want to start with them together. But then also for those that have systems that they've built over time and have collected data and all that. Part of the reasoning also behind the reporting tool is to enable you, send aggregated data about part of your supply chain, maybe in a country, and then be able to include that, to the sum total of what everyone else is reporting to, so that then we can come up with ways of saying as a sector, on this particular issue of profitability in a country like Vietnam, this is where we rank, based on different information, from different participants. But the other beauty is that for then the people that share their information into that larger system, then you can also compare yourselves anonymously with the rest of the people that are in, the place that you are in. So we have those two things: one of facilitating the reporting, because it's one thing to say, go report, but it's also another thing to really say, here is a tool you can use, to go and use it on your farmers, these are questions you can use to ask the farmer to be able to get data on that indicator. And then in the back end, then all the visualization is done and you're able to see yourself, this is where I am in this process. So far, the process has started. We have a bit of dummy data, because there's still a lot of process of improving the system. So we have systems that generate automatically names of people and locations or where they can be. So this is, for instance, the case of a screenshot. If you are logging in as a person and you had a group of about 4,000 farmers in the system, of some of the things that you can see about each of those farmers, and then give that data over them. And the beauty of these then is that you have a system in place whereby you can keep all your things, but that is connected to a larger system that then allows you to compare or even contrast with things around you, and then get into the other question that we were asking ourselves at the very beginning. You know, why am I here? Why is my productivity, and I'm in this same region, you know, at 2 tons, yet everyone else is at 700 kilos. What have I done better? Or if you're on the opposite direction, what have I done worse? And what are some of those best practices? Because at the end, we feel the data, the collection and all that, and the showing is not just for showing sake, but it's meant to move us to the next level of whereby we ask ourselves, you know, if it's like profitability, why is profitability in this area, you know, such a challenge? And what are some of the things that we can do to try and improve these? So the testing tool is really on beta form. But some of the next steps that we have on these is that we have, because of the beauty of our national platforms that also have, you know, challenges in showing, you know, what improvement some of the processes that the partners in the country have led to. We have the ability to start testing this tool in the field at a landscape level, and which was the other issue, because then we're asking ourselves, when it gets to this reporting part, some of us have very direct connection with some of the farmers or the supply chains that we buy from. Others have very indirect relationships with that. So then how do we ensure that each member is able to say something about, you know, these indicators for their parts of the supply chain as a whole, without then thinking about all the challenges that will have with them reaching? So those that already have data, or those that have direct connection with people on the ground, for those we can test the tool in terms of then how it aggregates and how then it reports as a collective. But those without, then we are also testing in terms of in the field what it would take, because we also want to think about issues like, for instance, when people start reporting, what will it cost them, even just getting that data from the farmer, and what are some of the challenges of getting those data points from the farm, and also in terms of how does that benefit maybe a farmer who has to spend 30 minutes answering, you know, someone's questions and so on. But we are hoping then with these tests, and I know in previous calls we had also talked, you know, for like people who would want to be part of the testing to be in it. But we think right now testing it on a landscape is more, I would say, more advantageous, you know, for all members, because then that means, like now, for instance, the test we want to do in November is taking like a whole district, you know, working together with the ministry, with the government, working with partners, and then you test in a whole district, and then you have all those indicators for all the population of that particular district as a baseline. And then you say in 2017, this is where these farmers were on these particular issues. So that is one of them. But we also are going to open a window to welcome people that already have systems that are collecting data, to see how they could aggregate anonymously some of that data so that then it's comparable amongst many. And for these, we are hoping the tool will be usable for the larger community in the first quarter of next year, because of course there is a lot of then making it a global tool. But then we'll also ensure towards later this year, we'll have more calls on testing on this tool. So I welcome any questions on the tool. Unfortunately, since I have what we call, like, I didn't want to say superpowers, but for lack of a better word, administrative powers on that particular system, I can't show you the screen because it won't be how each member will be seeing. But then all other issues like how safe is that data in that system, all these are discussions that are going on in terms of where is it stored, what does it mean if I put in my data, what are privacy issues and all that. All these discussions are there. And we have also used that opportunity, you know, to interact with some of the best minds we have on issues to do with open data or data privacy, to ensure that then when such a system comes, especially if you say it's to be used by multiple people, then all these issues are taken care of. Like for instance, we do when you open your Gmail and so on. So I don't know whether there are any questions on this, but there will be more details coming, especially updates on how the testing is going, updates on how the tool is available, especially for those that do not have systems in place. But for those that have systems in place, there'll also be discussions on how do I, share part of my data, and then how do I access, the global and see where I relate, to that global overview. So I want to open the floor for any questions or discussions on this, or even better views, because we could be thinking we are giving the best, but we know a meeting of minds is what gets the best. So I'll unmute all of you. And again, like we said, you have the chance to mute yourself if you do not want to talk, but also unmute yourself if you want to say something. Any questions, comments, suggestions? Then I think just to avoid that we have white spaces, I'll talk about the next steps, and then I will, since we have 13 more minutes, I'll give each one of us to give a chance to give a closing word, and then we will stop it at that. So in terms of, sorry, I think I missed Sonia's hand.
Hello?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. I wanted to ask you, in terms of reporting, you were mentioning a baseline analysis and also individual initiatives. For me, it would be interesting to know who will report in the end. Will there be various reporting lines, or who's supposed to report the data into the GCP system?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Sonia, for that question. Especially knowing, the complexities of the chain. I know we've had experiences in our former life, especially when it came to commercial reporting. And I know in the past, the chain, of course, is long, from the producer to the roaster, and many of these are members either as producers, as intermediaries, or as roasters. Or even as retailers, and so on. And in the terms of participation, then it says members, once the members agree to report on the framework, once the framework is available. But I know that particular question you've asked, in many scenarios, what we've seen is that and also this came up in the member assembly when JD presented, people they are working with, and someone asked in that, so then who then has the final report on all the farmers? And I remember in that case, JD student said, of course, that's our supply chain. But these are questions we're asking ourselves on, because, for instance, if we talk about, intermediary buyers like, exporters and importers here, if they report and then their final buyer also reports, then we have issues maybe of double reporting and so on. Of course, that could be corrected if we did it like on our first test in a landscape level, where then all you do as one of the members is say, oh, I bought mine from this and this and this area in this district. So what are the results of that? But also we know some of us that have systems already have information on the farmers that we buy from. And in relation to some of those indicators, we can collect that. So the obligation, of course, is 2 members, but in terms of the practicability of that, I think we will have different scenarios of how. And I think at this level, we haven't mapped them correctly because, of course, we have not had to yet. But I think we will need, and I thank you for raising that question, we will need discussions on how those different chain looks, and also to avoid maybe putting too much burden on one part of the chain. And on the other hand, also to avoid double counting of what kind of change we are having in the sector. So it will need that kind of fine tuning, but we know from some of the past experiences, then the burden tended to lie on one end of the chain because of then the ease of then not double counting. Because if I am the retailer, then that pack I know no one else will be able to ascribe their thing to it because I'm the one who put it there and then sold it. But I think these discussions will come, and we also welcome the community, to think of ways of that. But also then to see how then when that responsibility is put, then what it means in terms of membership. But I think what we will try as much as possible is to be very efficient in that decision, so that then it does not put too much pressure on one part of the chain, but it's also does not add to a cost of the chain when we are talking about trying to improve income or the prosperity of the whole chain, and we are spending too much money in trying to determine that. So those are the guiding principles, but I think there will be a bit of discussion on that, and we welcome your suggestions on some of the best ways to do that. But we and some of the other things that have been talked about is maybe unique indicators for farmers, unique IDs for farmers in different places. But then that also assumes that there is a very concrete chain whereby you can tell for these lots that I bought, it came from these farmers, then this is the information about those farmers. So those are some of the challenges, but we know we are going to deal with them in one way or another. The challenge will be more the balance of responsibility and the associated costs, ensuring that that then is not wrongly put on one end of the chain.
Yeah, thank you for this detailed answer.
I hope it was convincing.
Yeah, I really like the idea about having a benchmark analysis, I don't know, every once a year or something, in order to compare the overall improvement of a region or a district, as you said, and maybe map the individual initiative against it.
Yeah. One of the suggestions that we got from one of our dedicated members was maybe if we see, like now when we test in Vietnam, if we see the value added from such a process, then maybe one of the things for people that do not have direct connection to a particular chain is really say, we will put a few funds in a small pool, or we will get a grant from somewhere and then use it to run that process. So it's really ensuring we get the most efficient ways of ensuring that we get that information. But if it also adds a lot of value to our processes, then it's no longer a cost, but a part of improving ourselves. And thank you, Sonia, for putting into the discussion some of the things that we avoid till later.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Maybe a rejoinder to Sonia, and then maybe I can close. You can raise your hand, or you can just unmute yourself and say something. All right. In the absence of the next one is we'll have another update call in a month's time. But depending on the discussion that will be there on the definitions, if we need an update in between that timeline, we will easily send all the participants a request, to come in and maybe have some of those discussions. But the next step is the fact that then we will send you that link on some of the definitions that had been described. You will have that link, and then you will have a chance as much as possible, either lead us to a resource if you feel we are on the wrong direction on one particular methodology, or on the other hand, input your comments. And then, like, Camilo mentioned, in instances where we get into challenges with democracy, maybe then we will need a forum to try and then put more facts before deciding then as a sector that these are the things, some of the things that we need to start with. And so, and that will be on the forum, and these links will come with the results of this meeting, and you receive that. Normally our system sends that either a day or 2 days after the call. So look out for that in your email, including the recording, because then the recording has to be downloaded and uploaded to a place that you can access it. So in the absence of any further questions, this is what we've had discussions on so far. So the next steps, we were meant to have a call on the 9th of November, but because of some of these processes that are ongoing, if it's more things that people are inputting, then rather than get you together for an hour, would rather than get you at your right time putting in the comments. And if there is need or there's a lot of feedback and we need to get you together, we will then send you that. But the next call then should be towards the end of the next month, which is a month from now. And on that, then we hope to have, you know, even good input on what is happening in Vietnam, because then the processes for the test on Vietnam then starts at the beginning of that month. Maybe a closing remark from Jenny, and then we will end this call. And thank you for your time. Thank you for your inputs. Thank you for raising, you know, important questions and very, at times, some that we do not have very clear answers, but I believe that then help in the minds of the others in the meeting to try and then see how we will go about those. So Jenny, a closing remark, and then I think we can let the rest of us go and have either good evening, good morning, or good afternoon.
No, thanks everyone for the questions. It's good to see so many people engaged and asking questions about how this is going to work. So we're looking forward to the next phase, working together with you to really get some meat on the bone and see how we can really start the actual reporting together with all of the GCP members and others in the sector.
So thank you, Jenny. Anyone else with a closing remark, or do I say thank you and thank you very much for the time? Since there is no hand raised, have yourself a nice time, and see you all either on your comments or online soon. Bye.